Hey guys, my name's Doug. Welcome to my shop. Today we're going to talk about just lots of odds and ends, literally in a sense. One is an update just on a couple little things on the hydraulic jack challenge to Adam. Then the next one is he mentioned in Saturday Night Special 63 some of the finds he's been scoring at these flea markets. So, mark my words, I'm going to have to start doing the same thing because he found a whole bunch of left-hand thread taps that made me drool, especially in the price that he's getting some of this stuff for. Now, there's more of it in the States, so of course that makes a difference, but nonetheless, we'll show a little bit about why I need to have left-hand thread tools, both tap and dies, but also maybe even a mini lathe, because I want to start making some of my own threads on my pieces, or maybe find someone locally to do it again for me here. And then we're also going to talk about just a small update on the hydraulic jack I mentioned. And then we're also going to go into the how we make a tie rod end for a race car and why left-hand threads are important, and show you where it fits on the race car. And then to start off, we're just going to have some fun here. So Adam has had some challenges figuring out the weight of that welding table of his. And he's got a neat little tool that he's got on loan. I think it's a national weight scale type of thing where it kind of compresses or expands, and wherever expansion measurement is, it's going to be able to determine what the weight of it is. And I question its accuracy in these days, and temperature and a whole bunch of things. But it is what it is, and it's kind of interesting how he's got it on loan. It'll be interesting also to really see what that table weighs according to that scale. Well, I have another way of doing it, because I think it's way more than even 600 pounds. But there's a way to do it, and it's accurate to within 1 pound if you have high quality tools to do it. And Adam doesn't have what I have here, which is on the floor, which are scales designed for race cars. But he lives in the Pensacola area, and one of the most famous racetracks in the country is Five Flags, which is in Pensacola, just outside of the city. And there's every major race team there, super late, late model, pro late, has these tools, which are scales. So I'm going to see if I can make some shout outs to some friends of mine that are in the racing community in Pensacola, and see if they can maybe make a jaunt over to Adam's place to really weigh what that welding table is going to carry out to be a final weight. I'm not going to say anything a little silly, but I bet you it's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if that table is 700 plus pounds in actuality. When he tried to weigh it the first time, really old springs in that scale that he got, yeah, they're good within a ballpark to some degree, but they get old and they lose their tensile strength. So I'm kind of curious to what that thing really weighed, man. Should be kind of fun, just for an exercise. It's nothing. It's obviously it's not going to break the conch or anything else. It's certainly sturdy enough for any kind of project he's going to take on. But what does it really weigh? It's just starting to scratch my mind. So what we got here on the ground, as you can see, I have laid out my racing scales. These are made by Longacre. They're a pretty popular brand in the racing community. They are very accurate to within a pound. And they're specifically marked for each corner so we can measure what we call cross weight in the car when we set up a car for spring adjustments, and what we call wedge, or the amount of cross weight we purposely twist into the car. So each one of these pads is identified: a right front, right rear, left rear, and a left front. And they're labeled and they're cabled directly. There's wireless models available now, but I've had these now for about 5 years, and they're dead on. These are what they call single load cell versions. You can get 2 cell, which means they're just sensing off of 2 cells rather than 1. I don't really know if there's an advantage over the other than the distribution of wear and tear maybe a little bit, and perhaps the accuracy might go up a little better when you're dividing the work. But I also think because of the way these things are going to be set, quite frankly, it's static load, and we're not trying to purposely determine the dynamic load of the race car. It's just a basic setup tool to understand what your race car is doing. So, if the race teams in Pensacola could go over, one of them that could maybe go over there and put each one of those caster wheels on one of these load cells, because you can put them all close together, it doesn't matter what they are. I'm pretty sure we could probably get a weight within 1 pound of what that welding table weighs. So over here, what we got is the got the mount there for all the indications. And so let's lower this car and see what happens. Let's see what the weight is of this car as it sits right now. Car's coming down on the scales. The scales are zeroed out. I did that before when I set the pads up. There's a fresh battery in the piece, or in the scale tool. Let the car settle. Come fully off the hydraulic jacks. The hoist, sorry. Make sure we're all safe and the car is centered. And let's see what we got here. Okay. We got a total weight of that car of 2,505 pounds. And you can see what the corner weights are. You can see what each one is weighing specifically right now. And that's pretty cool. And I think we can do the same thing for Adam's table. So maybe someone knows one of the race teams that has scales, can do the same thing, and let's find out really what that table weighs and determine. I bet you that thing is one heavy piece. So without further ado, okay guys, so what you're looking at is the front end of the race car. I'll just kind of identify the components here. You got basically your steering arms coming to your tie rod ends. The sway bar is removed just so I can show you a little better all the details of the parts we're talking about. And we have a center link in this race car. The other way to do it is with a rack and pinion assembly right here. Usually there'll be a plate welded here, and then you just have the tie rod ends going up to the end. But the traditional rules for older limited late model class cars is a center link. That's now beginning to change. So most of the rules now allow you to have a rack in place of a center link, and I'm really seriously debating about doing it. And then I noticed, or sorry, I wanted to show the two different types of assemblies. And we're going to show in the next segment of the videos this style of tie rod end, which consists of two adjusting bars with an adjusting rod in the middle. And then of course we have at the other end, we've got just a straight bar with the right hand and left hand threads going in. And of course it still goes to the other spindle and steering arm, and of course attaches to the center link itself, which is attached to the pitman arm into your steering box, and then an idler arm at the other end. And of course the sway bar normally goes here, and it varies in size from smallest ones we've ever run are 1 inch, and then we're right up to 1 3/4 or 2 inches in some of these cars now these days. I run everything from 1 3/8 to 5/8. I haven't run an 1 3/4 bar in this car. It doesn't particularly like it. And so what we got is you got a Heim end coming on the other side of this, and a Heim on the other end of this one as well. And pending on your clearance, and you're going to have to adjust these for your toe, how much this tire is going to be farther out, and that depends on the radius of the racetrack. So let me just kind of get you zoomed in here a little bit. So, as you can see, what you got here is the end of the bar, and there's not a lot of room in there between the end of the Heim and the steering arm. But even more interesting is the clearance at the end near the center link, and you can see this is why we use those thinner ones, because of course that steering arm, our center link, is going to obviously be moved left to right in the car, and that thing has to clear. while on this side we've got a thicker one. But that's because of the way the center link is tied in. You can see where there's lots of clearance. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. So that when it's turning, then you can see it. And so in this case, like I said, there is just a straight bar. Now we can use both of these different types of tie rod ends because we're only, when we adjust during setup of the car, we only really need to adjust one side. We'll make sure that in this case the right side over here is adjusted properly, and then of course meaning to be straight, and then we'll do a toe adjustment only on one side, and we've picked the right hand side of the car to do it. It doesn't have to be, you can do either or. Some guys prefer left, that's the way you should tow a car, is on the driver's side of the car. But the end is that you're going to have an alignment of the pitman arm to be dead center, and you're going to pick a choice. And that's how you do it. But as you can see, there's when this steering arm is moving, suddenly the amount of room you have becomes a little bit limited. Let me just see if I can turn the steering wheel for this wheel for you here. That's fully turned to the left. And remember that these wheels are hanging down right now. So, you know, they're supposed to be a lot more level. But you can see the amount of clearance in there. It's getting to be a little tight. Hopefully you can see that. And it's the same thing over here, but we have more room because of the way that center link curves out. When we turn the wheels the other way, again, we got to worry with the same kind of clearance issues for the driver's side. But as you can see here, we got lots of clearance through the arc and the travel. Gets to be a little tighter sometimes when you're near the steering knuckle. That's why we don't put these bars too thick. Sometimes those big nuts and hexes, they can interfere with your steering arm. You'll notice also that this steering arm is twisted. That's done on purpose because, again, this is where the suspension is just hanging down. When the car is level and at ride height, that arm, we want it to be parallel with that tie rod end. And of course, we still got lots of clearance over here. But notice how close and tight we are to the control arm. We're darn near hitting it there. We got maybe a 1/16 of an inch. Now, we would never have the wheels turned this tight on the racetrack, but it shows you just how clear you got to be, and again, why we pick certain sizes of rod. On a strut coilover car, this probably wouldn't be an issue, but this is a big, what we call a big spring car, not a coilover car. But we would, again, never have the wheels turned to that excess. And again, just remember that what you're seeing here is the suspension hanging down. So when this car is on the ground and these springs are finally getting low, this tie rod along with the other one will be straight across. And so when this arm comes up, you know, this twist that we got in here, it'll be level with that. And that's how we get how we determine our moment center and our roll center in the car. And again, like I mentioned, we got a big spring in this on this car. This bolt is for the sway bar to adjust it. It's called a slapper bar that comes through these eyelets and then mounts to here. It's a monoball that's inside the control arm, and away we go. So that's kind of what the geometry we're dealing with and why we use left hand and right hand. And I like using, again, the two-piece, because when I'm adjusting and I'm coming up from the top, adjusting this to do the toe, to bring this tire out or in, or vice versa if you really like doing it the other side, you're only dealing with one bar, not the whole, and you get a little more fine-tuning of the adjustment that you need. and away you go. Okay, so hope you enjoyed that little bit of race car technology and how we set them up a little bit, and we'll go on to the next segment now. Okay guys, so here's what we got in front of us, which is the tie rod end, and what you'll notice is just two standard pieces of hex bar. They are pretty straightforward. They're just pieces that we've put a thread in, and this is homemade. When I had some guys that had access to some machine shop stuff, then this is what we tended to make. And this style, compared to the other one that's on the race car, just one straight bar and a left hand and a right hand thread heim, is pretty much common now, and it's just a tube. But you can make this out of any kind of stock. This is 6061 aluminum, as is this component here, the middle for adjustment. And of course what we got is a left hand and a right hand heim. This is a right hand heim, and this is a left hand heim here. These heims are pretty straightforward. There's not a lot to them, but it is important to pick the right one for your race car setup. So, and then of course we have the appropriate nuts to go with it. So the trick to making it adjustable and equal, to make sure you've always got support on the tie rod for when you're steering the car, is to make sure enough of the body of the main hex bar is onto the adjusting rod. And so what we typically do is we try to cover about that much, including the nut, to start. So you've got over 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches really into the adjusting rod. And then we try to do the same roughly here as well, only it's about 1.5 inches by the time you're really kind of done on both sides. So let's kind of go through the components one by one. You'll notice, as we showed on the race car, this one is thinner than the other one. We can get away with a thicker one on the tie rod end that meets the spindle and the steering arm on it, because there's more clearance, although that's sometimes iffy. But here, for near the center link, or in the case of a rack and pinion, you may have clearance issues, particularly when the rod is being adjusted in and out from the steering angles. And we'll, as you saw on the other video segment, that's why these are thinner. So there's also different kinds. This is a chrome moly, and this is a steel version that we'll go through the part numbers with. But this one is a left-hand thread, as I had mentioned earlier. And so they take a lot of force. And these are spares that I got here, which we are going to wind up replacing this one. I'll tell you why in a minute. And these are made by QA1 Precision Products. And this one is a PCML 12. This is an L for left. So we'll use that and put it on this end here. And then of course we have a PCMR R for right 12. These are 3/4 inch in diameter on the insides of the ball. And the pitch of the thread is a 16, so it's a 3/4 by 16 thread. There are different types out there. There's 18, there's 12, there's 10. I find for tie rod adjustments to go to a finer pitch, more threads per inch, to give us just the flexibility of adjustment that we need when we're doing toe and Ackerman and so on the adjustment. Mainly for toe, though, of course, for towing out the wheels as we're going out. So the components, like I said, there's the hex bars, the adjustment rod in the middle, the two nuts, the correspondent, and the two heims. And then of course you got bolts coming through with spacers to adjust your bump steer and your Ackerman, and that'll be a segment for another video. So the challenge, of course, is when you're doing adjustments on the race car for a setup, the toe will vary from racetrack to racetrack, how farther out toe usually you want to set on the car based on the diameter of the racetrack in the sense of the turns at either end. And so you got to compromise sometimes. Sometimes the the racetrack has different radiuses of turns at both ends, from turns 1 and 2, maybe a different radius than turns 3 and 4. So you compromise to what your toe out's going to be, and that helps with the alignment of the steering on the car. This particular type of version of Heim is important because they are carbon steel, and of course we just go to our catalog book to find out, you know, what we're looking for here on parts. And so we'll go and take a look at this, and the static loads on the PCMRs, both the left and the right, they're 25,000 pound static load capability, which is pretty significant. Now these are chrome moly steel rod ends, as I mentioned earlier, and this one is what they call a carbon moly steel rod, called an EXM, and their load ratings are a little less. This one is 16,565, and that's still more than sufficient for a race car. You do get banged around sometimes when they're coming around, and so you got to compromise on your load of what the ability of the Heim rod to take abuse. Now I will say, it's interesting, this one's no good anymore. It's been hit pretty good. I don't know if you can see that little nick there, kind of right at the top. We'll have to see if you can see that little nick right at the top here. But essentially this Heim end may look good, but when you try to turn the ball, it's tight right around this edge. It's been compressed and hit, and so this will need replacing. It's got to be free flowing, very easy for movement. The ball itself looks like there's no real bad wear on it, but it's definitely been compressed. So this Heim end is no good. We may save the nut, and that's about it. Having spare left-hand thread nuts is always nice to have. This one is actually still in reasonably good shape. You can see it floats easily within the Heim itself, and there's no damage or nicks on the Heim, so we won't need to replace this end. And again, this is the right hand. I probably will replace the nut. And then of course what we have here is the softest bit of the tie rod assembly, which is your adjusting rod. Now, I don't see these as much anymore. This one's made again out of 6061 aluminum. It was just machined on a lathe. Hint, hint for Adam, maybe you can make some of these up. I prefer aluminum on short tracks, because when we do get banged up, you really do want some breakaway force. This one's actually bent after being hit, so it's no longer serviceable. This is important to know, because, you know, if we can make this out of steel, and of course it will save it, and I'll just kind of prove to you kind of what's going on here. So let's see if we get this right. So a right hand thread, I've got it here, and we'll thread it in, and you can see for the first little bit it's fine going in, and we can just spin it all the way through. But at some point when the car got hit on the front wheel, it started binding, and it sometimes you don't notice it. So this side is getting out right there. It's got a little rough. You can tell that the threads are starting to get a little wonky. But right here is when it really starts getting pressured. And so you obviously know that this side is bent. Rarely do these bend. If they bend, you've really taken a real bad hit. And then of course we'll do the same on this side. This is now the left hand side of the threads. And we'll screw that. You can even see a couple nicks maybe in there. Oops. They should go on nice and easy. And as you can see, as we go farther down, oh, there's the first little hard bind. And then it starts getting real sticky right around here again. So this thing's definitely been hit, and right at this point I can't even get the right side even farther than that without, again, lots of force. You cannot, if you know that that's bent, then of course your alignment of the total length of the Heim is not going to be any good. Then to test, of course, the main body of the hex bar itself, we're going to put this on. And the threads in here may be crimped from the hit as well. And in fact, I can feel a little bit of force resistance every, revolution. Darn near it's got just a little bit of a bind. Every turn I got. In fact, there's a little bit of a nick there, it looks like. And it gets really tight there. So that's where the main bend is, obviously. Somewhere in here, there's a bit of an arc. I wouldn't use this again, this particular piece, and this nut, so this will have to be replaced. And then, of course, you're going to do the same thing on the right-hand thread. Assembling it. Like so. And you can see this is fairly easy so far. We're not looking for, there's not a lot of play in here, you can hear it. And then it tightens up. And then of course we put this will be a left-hand thread going in with a left-hand assembly. Like so, and keep going. And again, we want to put as much of the bar as we can and leave enough adjustment for roughly about 1/8 of an inch either way, in the sense of out or in, so a total of 1/4 inch total. And I'll show you what we're trying to do here. So that side's pretty good. And then we'll do finally a right hand thread at the outside. Like so. And there we go. So this is the full assembly of a tie rod end, fully adjustable. Most of your cars have some kind of tie rod adjustment anyways, only it's a set of steel kind of tube around the thread and the tie rod end to adjust it. Now this end here will go to the center link because it's thin and it'll have a narrow piece. And so this really is our adjusting end for adjusting the toe in and out. And what we're trying to accomplish is, again, a maximum of roughly of 1/8 inch total play on both sides. So if I need to adjust the toe outwards, put the steering arm farther out, I'm going to turn this piece counterclockwise if I'm looking forward to from the front of the car. And basically I'm unwinding it. And it's basically going to unwind equally at both ends if this has been remained static, which it will be because it's bolted to the steering arm. And so all I'm really adjusting is this bar. I'm not adjusting the rods itself. I'm just adjusting this hex piece here and taking equal amount of threads out on both sides. And again, that's the advantage of having a left-hand, right-hand thread piece. And we want intentionally a weak link in the middle. There's some debate about this in the racing circles, whether you could just use a whole straight bar, use a right-hand thread and a left-hand thread, and run right through. The problem with that is that if you take a really hard hit, a lot of that energy is going to come right into the race car, onto your steering wheel, and into you. You want this steering arm during a bad hit, or tie rod end during a bad hit, to bend. That takes a lot of energy out of the car, and it can protect your wrist. Not that this actually happened because of that, but you get the idea when you're inside a race car. And things happen just so fast in a race car. So I like having two equal pieces and centering a rod in the middle to center it to take the force and make this out of aluminum. But on big tracks, half mile or bigger, 3/4 of a mile, I will take this out and make it steel, because even a small little rub at those speeds and the amount of energy, it's enough to bend this. This is not strong enough, and your toe will be hit. So we'll use the same idea, only make this adjusting rod out of steel. So it's a little more strength, and we'll make the rod end length of the threaded piece a little longer, to be further in, and that gives it some extra strength too. So the weak link is your shoulder. Again, you can make these different sizes, but you have to be careful. The bigger these bars are, sometimes it won't clear the center link on your car and the sway bar location coming into the car, which we'll show in the other video segment. So this is really what I use. A lot of guys still just gone to a single bar, right hand and a left hand thread, and then just adjust the whole bar. I think that's a lot of energy in there, and of course, as a consequence, what you're saying is that you're hoping that the high ends bend instead. I like to distribute the load if it's going to take a major hit. This is not expensive material, and therefore it's safer, and it will not hurt your frame of your car, because that's more expensive to replace. And I'd rather replace one of these assemblies during a major accident than the frame, or sometimes what we call a front clip. Sometimes it's not avoidable. It is what it is on some crashes. Now the Heim here, like I said, this one was rated for something like 16,000 pounds, and it got hit enough where it compressed. So 8 tons worth of force went into this and hit it, and you know, that's a lot of weight, energy that went into this and bent that assembly. We do have other kinds. Again, this is an aluminum one. And you can see this one got hit pretty good as an example. In fact, part of the Heim assembly around it, the outside end of it, actually got hit and started cracking. And it hit such a force that it snapped the rod end cleanly. You can see on how it snapped. And yeah, that's not good. The advantage of aluminum, though, when you have aluminum body, is of course that it's taking the energy load. The problem here is that when it snapped, it literally snapped away from the steering arm, and of course you got no steering at all, so there's no chance of even making it around the racetrack. You need to get called a tow truck. But during such hits, you know, it's a compromise as to what kind of material you're using on your car. You can see the other end here; it just snapped really good. Nice and clean. I mean, it was just a violent hit on how this thing snapped. And this one too is a left-hand thread, actually, so this is a left-hand nut we'll keep. But you gotta check these threads. The nice thing about aluminum is that it will obviously fail before a steel nut will, but that just shows you the energy that these things take. And so, you know, when you're racing, the heavier the car, probably the more stronger you're going to want these units. But again, you're going to have to be careful as to your selection of Heims that you use and the material. This one is 15/16 in thickness, so I use a 15/16 wrench. Same on this piece. The more common stock now available is 7/8, and the Heim threads here on all of them, again, they vary in different sizes. So this is a bigger one, really thick. And you can see that this is just a basic rod, but it's more than sufficient for what we need. Now, these threads, as you can see, there's a big difference. So this is designed, I'll use this on 1/2 mile, 3/4 mile, and make a larger piece, or I'll use this on my trailing arms. This is what this one's for. And we'll use that for a trailing arm assembly, which again will be another video. But these are 12s, so you get an idea of I think this is the same thing, only this is a right as well. This is the left, it's the same one, it's the same thickness. And again, what we'll do is we'll put a right and a left on a trailing arm just to give us some adjustment, and we'll move the whole rod. So same kind of idea. These are rated, like I say, for 18,000 pounds of static load. So there you go. That's kind of the assembly piece of how a tie rod end is made up. There's lots of different ways to do it, but this is the way I tend to assemble them. Hopefully you found that interesting and informative as to how we build some of our race car components using right hand and left hand threads, which is why I was jealous when Adam Booth got those taps especially left-hand ones, because again we'd need a left hand into this body here. And you know what? I'm just being a whiny little guy because I really should buy some left-hand ones, and start making my own. Again, you can get this stock; it's fairly cheap, and then making your own rather than buying complete assembly saves a lot of money. It's hard to believe though that these rod ends are worth about $30 each because they're high-end quality versions. This is, cheap aluminum in a sense. Hex bar, like I said, is pretty common. 7/8 is the more common size than 15/16 though. And there's $60 worth of parts and some labor, which of course as a race car owner you're tending to do more of it yourself than farm it out. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. Well, as you guys can see, the jack's still in pieces here. But I wanted to give just a little quick update on this. Pieces are all fine. I just inspected all the threads and the nuts and everything else. They're all okay. I'll need to lubricate the ends in here and take it apart, prop a little more, and clean it all, and then put some more heavy-duty grease in it. We had some questions based on the last video about again, the size of this and how we're going to be able to do the ratios and what Adam's going to be challenged with on this body. But one of the things I would point out is, I thought we had a lot more room, but this is a cast piece here, so the amount of extra space that's available for Adam to make any kind of extra width is somewhat limited. It's about maybe an 1/8 inch either side of that body that he could go wider in a cylinder. But again, we're still going to have to kind of go through this and see if we should either make a bigger ram cylinder or not. But again, that's something for Adam to look at. I know he's really busy right now, so we'll have to figure that out. Okay? So, but everything's in good shape in this. I just really wish it didn't take 11 strokes to get up. Many of you know that there's different styles of jacks out there. And you've made some comments that are very interesting on the different types of ways we can do this, like pneumatic or electric or a motor of some kind. There's really not a lot of room in here to put a motor. And again, the goal for Adam is not to reinvent the wheel here. It's to assemble something, a hydraulic ram of some kind that he can have fun with. This is not to set a whole new standard of pneumatic jacks or air jacks or hydraulic jacks. It's something that hopefully he can machine on his Victor and his Monarch and maybe some other tools that he has access to, and have some fun with it. This is not an exercise in trying to recreate the world. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I know I had fun making it. I just want to give a shout out to everyone that's been watching these videos. I'm kind of overwhelmed about how many views I've even gotten. Got to thank really Adam Booth for having me getting addicted to his channel. Go check it out. He's just done some amazing work. And there's some others out there too that I like. You can see one of my favorites. There's just so many guys out there doing some pretty cool stuff. And you can browse my Google Plus page. You can look at all my YouTube favorites, like I said. But this is just for lots of fun. I'm not trying to suggest that anyone get into racing, but it is a lot of fun if you can. Start out in mini stock or what they call Thunder or street stock, and then go on to limited late model and pro late and so on if you really want to pursue it. And if you have an idea of the mechanics of how a race car works out of this, then maybe that's entertaining to you, or maybe curious to maybe join a race team. It's all about being involved if you want and enjoying it. The other thing I want to point out is just leave comments and subscribe if you like. This is again just for fun. This is not some big production. I will be able to answer your questions if I can. Maybe we'll go through the race car in different segments to tell you what's going on in a car and how we adjust on it. And we'll just have to see. So one of the things I thought, for example, of doing is showing how a track bar is adjusted.
And you'll notice a lot on the big NASCAR telecasts, they're talking about setup and adjustments of what happens in a race car. And maybe we can go through some of the items and what they adjust and show you what it really does to a car and why they do it. So leave me your comments, see if you want that kind of episodes to be made, or if you like something else to be shown, let me know. But again, thanks very much for watching, and subscribe if you like. And we'll just take it one day at a time and see where this goes. I even myself don't know where it's going to go. But again, really, truly, thanks for watching, and hope you have some fun with it. Till next time, take care.